If I told you that there was a videography technique that would help set the mood of your videos appropriately and give you consistency across all your shots, would you learn it? Now, a lot of people ignore this technique because it can seem a little bit complicated, to the point where they overthink and try and be too precise with it, which can stifle the whole process. But it doesn't have to be this way. And if you're like me, you want the freedom and things to be as simple as possible. And that's why in a bit, Jesse, this is Jesse, a commercial director with way more experience than me, is going to tell us why we shouldn't overthink it too much, and he'll also explain how he and the pros do it. And trust me, it'll make you feel loads better. Now, this concept is important to be aware of, so by the end of this video, you'll be able to convey the right moods within your images, and you'll be able to communicate effectively between clients or whoever else it is you're working with. So to explain what it all is, I'm going to tell you why filmmaking is like making a sandwich. There's a reason the perfect sandwich is the perfect sandwich. However it is you like your sarnie, it's going to have the perfect bread to filling ratio. And don't worry, I am using vegan cheese and vegan lettuce. Too much bread and it's going to be dry. Too much filling and it's going to be stodgy. And this is the same with music as well, because each genre prefers a certain amount of instruments to get the right tonal balance. And this all carries over into filmmaking with contrast ratios. That's the difference between the light and the dark parts of the image. You can have a contrast ratio between the key side and the fill side of the face, for example, or the subject to the background. So key to fill or key to background. And what you want to do is find the balance that works best for the mood or style of your video. And the bigger the difference, or the more shadows there are, the moodier it seems.
Traditionally, they say a comedy will have a lower contrast ratio, so it'll be a bit flatter of an image, where, you know, a drama has like really deep contrast ratio. You know, the key light is really bright, and you know, in The Godfather, you don't even see anything else in the whole frame.
So for example, this shot that I'm using right now is fairly bright because I want it to be light and engaging and fun. But if I wanted it a little bit moodier, I could turn the light off in the background and also put a grid on this key light here to stop this key light from spreading onto other walls and brightening up the scene any further. And then that means it's only going to shine light on me, and it's going to create darker shadows. So you can measure contrast ratios and the differences between lights using stops of light. And if you don't know how to control the exposure, then check out this video here, because it's going to explain everything that you need to know. But in this example here, I've got the key and the fill light at the exact same brightness, so it's evenly lit, or what's known as flat lighting. And it's flat because you're not getting any shadows that define the shape of someone's face or an object. So this is a ratio of 1:1. Now I'm going to lower the brightness of the fill side light by 1 stop. So that means I'm halving the amount of light on this side. Now, because the key side is twice as bright as the fill side, that's a 2:1 ratio. And if we half the brightness of the fill side once again, we get a 4:1, and so on. So we can have 1:1, 2:1, 4:1, 8:1, 16:1, 32:1, and so on, depending on how much light or darkness you've got available. So I'm in a relatively small room, so some of the light is bouncing around and I can't control it that much. But you might be able to go even brighter and even darker. And you can definitely see the difference in moods between all of the different variations. And these ratios also apply to your key to background ratios as well. Now, all this seems very precise and rigid, and we don't want to be tied to the specific numbers. And truth be told, we don't really need to be either. It doesn't matter if it's perfectly 1 stop over or under, as long as it looks right to you and whatever it is you're trying to convey. And I always wondered how the pros do it. So here's Jesse explaining how he speaks to his teams and his clients.
I'll have a conversation with my cinematographer, with my DP, and we'll talk about the contrast. We don't talk about it in deeper words than moodiness. You know, that's kind of like how deep we go in the language. Because I also, if I'm hiring a cinematographer, I don't want to step on their toes. I don't want to tell them that I need a 3:1 contrast ratio on this. But what I'll do is include in the treatment a lot of references for things that have a similar mood or contrast. So it comes from reference. And then as a cinematographer, he or she should have the skills to look at my images and translate that into a contrast ratio with their team. Yeah. Clients and agency people, they respond to a visual example of a reference. If you imagine like a collage or a mood board or a treatment, what I call a treatment of visual references, they may look at this and say, this is too moody. That's the language they're going to use. They're never going to talk about a contrast ratio.
Now, having said this, it is handy to know because you can communicate that properly. Oh, can we just bring the key side down a stop or two? Something like that. And then everybody's going to know exactly what you mean. So it's great to have a technical understanding of all this stuff. Just don't panic about the minute details and being precise. However, if you are trying to be really specific and consistent throughout all of your shots in a scene, for example, you want to get as close as possible.
I'm a big believer that if you understand some of the fundamental technical details of anything, you can get to a place where you can raise the overall quality sooner. You have a starting point for every shot. And they also make you more professional and ready to work with a team. I just think it's important to understand that there is a thing called contrast ratios, and it's a really great way to tie shots together.
Usually, but not always, you would have the background at least one stop lower than your subject. And that just means that your subject is going to stand out a little bit more. If my background was too bright, it would be really distracting. Unless you're going for a silhouette, then that's a different thing entirely. Then you want to get the background as bright as possible. And again, the bigger the difference in contrast, the more moodier it's going to seem. But sometimes, even with a silhouette, you might want to show a couple of details on somebody's face, for example, so that they know what it is. So now that you've set the lighting and the mood the way you want it, there is one more thing that you need to do in camera next in order for your videos to look even more professional, consistent, and make it easier to color grade. And that's why you need to watch this video next, because it's going to teach you exactly how to do just that.